Hi guys, so today I'm going to be going over some grammatical structures that are particularly effective for scoring a high band in your IELTS exam. These are some more simpler structures and some more complex ones that you're going to want to use to ensure you achieve a high band. So to begin, these are some tenses you probably already should know. So there's the present simple and the present continuous. So, for example, I read is present simple. I am reading is present continuous. And now you're probably going to want to be using these when you're doing your speaking exam, when you're talking about things you are doing, things you like doing, your hobbies, your interests. You could say, I play football. I am playing football. And you can give a sense of your hobbies and easily present your ideas by using present simple and present continuous. And so moving on, this is simple past and present perfect. So you can say, I saw the movie last week using the simple past. And you can say, I haven't seen the movie yet. And that would be the present perfect. And we basically use that when an action has happened in the past, but the effects are affecting the present. So whereas we haven't seen the movie yet, that is affecting the present, even though it's something that's happened in the past. And using a range of these structures will really improve the quality of your written work and your speech as well, because one of the key areas that they're looking for, your examiners, is your range of tenses, your range of grammar, and how accurately you can use grammar. So onto the passive voice, maybe something you might not have come across. And we construct this by saying, we're using the verb to be in the relevant tense, and then we combine this with the past participle. So in this case, we have these questions were written. So were here is kind of a conjugation of to be. And passive voice is a bit more formal. It's something you really want to use in your written work. If you're saying, something has happened, these questions were written. And it's a kind of interesting way of constructing your sentence, and definitely something that your examiner will be very impressed by. So moving on, modal verbs. If you have a good understanding of modal verbs, you can really express your opinion better. So an example of this is, we could pass IELTS, I may pass IELTS, we might pass IELTS. So really, this is kind of about the degree of certainty. So we could pass IELTS is kind of, suggesting that there's a possibility we might pass it. Whereas if we use different kind of modal verbs, we can say we will pass IELTS, we must pass IELTS. And these kind of have more of an intense effect and express more certainty. And so you can argue your points really well by using modal verbs. You could say, we might go, but I'm not too sure. Or we must go, I have to go, I love going. And really, your examiners are looking at how well you use grammar and how often you use these different constructions. And so if you can make sure that you use, one of these kind of modal verbs, one of these, passive constructions, then this is something that they'll really, really like to see. And so onto the definite article. So this is maybe a little bit more basic, but definitely something you're going to want to be aware of. So this allows you to refer to something that your listener already knows about. So for example, let's say you're in your speaking exam and you've been talking about playing cricket, playing a sport. You could say then, this is why I enjoy the sport so much, using the word the to kind of reference what you were talking about before. So I don't want to just say, cricket again. I don't want to say this is why I enjoy cricket so much, because you've already told him about cricket. You want to instead use a slightly different grammatical construction and say, this is why I enjoy the sport so much. You can also use a definite article for emphasis. If you wanted to say, this is the best sport, this is the best. And this will kind of tie into the next slide, which is about superlatives and saying something is the best, which you're going to want to be doing a lot in your speech. If you're talking about your hobbies, you might say, this sport is so easy for me, it's the easiest for me. And that would be a superlative. So a superlative is saying something is the best of something, whereas a comparative is just comparing something to something else. So, for example, this book is easier to read than others. I'm comparing it with other books. And you can do this by constructing the adjective, by conjugating it slightly and saying, you change it from easy to easier. So you kind of add on the ER. And if you're going to want to say it's the best, it's the easiest to read, you want to just add on EST. And yeah, guys, this is such a key thing that the examiners are looking for. They want you to have a good range of grammar, a good accuracy of grammar. So you want to be using all these different types of grammar, but using them effectively and accurately, because you want to impress your examiners. You don't get much time to impress them. So you want to try and make sure you're using as many of these grammatical constructions as you can. And be sure to follow MPub IELTS, because we offer a range of free content, a range of grammatical lessons, vocabulary lessons on allowing you to pass your IELTS and do as well as you can, achieve the higher bands. And you've got to remember that preparation is key. You just simply have to know these parts of grammar. If you want to score highly in the grammar section, you just have to know when to use them, know how to use them correctly, use a range of them, and it'll really improve your work, especially your written work, where your grammar is going to be very evident to the examiner. And we host a range of free lessons and live sessions with native speakers. So you can come on and talk to me about things, improve your speech, your listening, learn to how a native speaker speaks with their accent. And so that kind of reaches the end of the presentation. And I was interested in potentially bringing some people in and we can have a conversation together. So Gulam says, "Dear, be happy." Thank you very much, Gulam. Always the positive guy. And yeah, guys, if you want to join and talk to me, you definitely can. Gulam, if you want to come on the call with me, we can have a chat, because I think you're a teacher as well. And maybe you've got some things you can tell us about grammar as well. But it's very important for your written work, especially because, you really just want to have a good understanding of grammar. And it's a way to pick up easy marks, because if you know your grammatical structures, you're going to be able to adapt any sentence and really talk your way through things effectively. So that's the end of the grammar section. But if anybody wants to join the call and have a chat, you can get the experience of talking to, a native speaker, someone who's got a bit of an accent, and it'll be a bit different than what you know generally, or what you've, people you spoke to around you might not have a native accent. So I wanted to bring Chelsea in, who is another tutor here, and she can have kind of a one-on-one interaction with me. We can talk about grammar or just anything in general. And by doing that, I think you guys will be able to see how we speak to each other, how native people talk, because it might not be, quite the same as people who are learning English speak. But grammar, I would say, is particularly important for your written work, because in speech, you can be a bit more informal, a bit more loose with your grammar, really. But when you're writing, you really want to make sure that you're, writing accurately with clear grammatical structures. And so it's very important to use a good range of these. I would say try to make sure you're ticking these off. Make sure that you're using, 1, 2, 3 of these in each of the essays you write, especially the passive voice for essays. So good at maintaining this formal voice. So if I was saying these questions were written, it's very very formal, something you might not say in speech. Modal verbs, express your opinion in the best way you can. So, we will pass IELTS, I may pass IELTS, we must pass IELTS. These different ways of, getting our opinion across. Definite article, be able to refer to things. Don't just say the noun over and over again. Refer to things, say, this is why I enjoy the sport so much. Don't just say the sport again, but talk about the sport.
Which one do you
It should just be called normal broadcast. Then you can join. Yeah. So we're going to get Chelsea to come in with me and have a chat, because she's a native speaker as well. She's from Liverpool too, I think. And she'll be able to kind of have a chat with me on camera. And, if you guys are going to study in the UK, you're unfortunately not going to come across people who speak with, your native accent. We're going to speak with very different kind of English accents. So I think it's good to be able to kind of hear us talk with each other, and interact with one another, and see kind of how we really interact. So I'm just waiting for Chelsea to join the call. But for any of you guys that are joining now, I've just been going over the really useful parts of grammar that are really important for your IELTS exam. I mean, you just have to know them, unfortunately. You have to know how to use them, when to use them. And what we're going to be doing on the page soon is we're going to be going over kind of academic piece of writing and picking out elements of grammar that these guys have used, because your writing task too is going to be very academic. You're going to want to have a real strong grasp of grammar, and be able to use a different range of these things. So present simple, present continuous, this is something you guys I'm sure will know. Very simple, basic structure. I think this would be typically lower band if you're using these a lot. You can use them a little bit, but make sure you're throwing in some simple past, present perfect, passive voice, and just learning to adapt the question so that you can get these different things in. Modal verbs, particularly useful. Definite article, learn how to refer to things. Comparatives and superlatives, so important, guys, because you're going to have to compare things in your exam. You're going to have to say, if you're doing writing task 1, the report question. Sure.
Nothing on the broadcast.
Yeah, no worries. Sure. So Chelsea's going to join now through the broadcast. So Mumman says hello. Hello again. Imran says hello. So we spoke to Imran yesterday and he's back, which is great. So I'm just going to post the chat. And if anyone wants to click that link, you can join the call with me. We can talk about grammar or something a bit more interesting, whatever you guys want. But grammar is something you guys just have to learn. Comparatives and superlatives, so important if you really want to kind of, be able to argue your opinion, say one thing's better than another, say one thing's the best. Giving your opinion is really you're going to have to be doing that so often in your exam. You know, you need to know comparatives and superlatives. So Chelsea's joined the stream. So
Finally.
I just kind of wanted to just have a basic chat with you and just kind of show people how native speakers interact with one another. I kind of wanted to start by talking about grammar, just because that's the topic we're talking about today. But I was just wondering about, Gulam says, I'm on cloud 9 to hear you on Facebook. Thank you very much. Cloud 9, lovely use of English there as well. Kind of an idiom, I guess, isn't it? Cloud 9, metaphor maybe. So Chelsea, what I really wanted to kind of ask you about, a little bit about grammar. So are you kind of quite conscious of using good grammar in your essays? Like, do you try to use these different phrases, or as a native speaker, does it just come quite naturally? Or
It's quite weird, isn't it? Because as a native speaker, I'm just going to put this out there. English is a very hard language to learn, first of all. So congratulations for anyone that's kind of on that journey, because there's so many rules surrounding grammar and so many exceptions to rules. So it can be a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, like you say, as a native speaker, it does come quite naturally. I am conscious of using good grammar, but I think it's quite a natural thing for me to start with. But then I go back and sort of check over things, especially when it's written, because it tends to slip.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important for just improving the flow of your essays as well.
Yeah.
Because although, I think with IELTS, there's 4 marking criteria. So there's task response, there's coherence, there's vocabulary, there's grammar, but they all kind of tie in together, because if you have a good grammatical structures in your work, then you'll be able to have more coherent ideas as well. So I think that's really important. And definitely in my written work, I try always use a range of grammatical structures, because, you can use simple sentences for effect, but you always want to make sure you're using more compound, complex sentences as well, and kind of different clauses with grammar. So I was kind of wondering, Chelsea, if you had much other experience with other languages and learning grammar in other languages, because obviously it does come quite naturally to us as native speakers. But, I was wondering what's your experience in kind of other languages and learning grammar, because for me, it's kind of the element of language learning that you try to kind of avoid, because it's not as fun as learning about vocabulary and all this. But
it can be a bit boring.
You just have to know it. So that's just part of it, I think.
Yeah. So I did a little bit, I did French GCSE, and I started at A level actually. And having the masculine and feminine sort of nouns and stuff, that was really hard, because obviously that's not something, although we have several different tenses in English, all of our sort of nouns and verbs and stuff, they're all very much, there's no sort of, there's no different suffix. That's right, I was looking for the word there. There's no different suffixes, whether it's like masculine or feminine. That doesn't really exist. Exactly. So that was something to sort of really watch out for.
Exactly. Yeah, I think when you learn another language, you realize how much grammar you kind of use without thinking about it when you're a native speaker. And, you'll have all these tables of different tenses. And this is something that we just don't really think about as a native speaker. But definitely for your IELTS exam, you need to be aware of all these different types of grammar, because it's easy to just not use them. It's easy to kind of forget about them. I mean, if me or you were to sit the exam, Chelsea, without knowing anything about IELTS, we might be tempted to not use all these grammatical structures, I think, and just answer it how we know. But I think if you're aware of all these different grammatical structures that do exist and that the examiners are looking for, I think you really can improve your band score. And that's what you have to do to achieve the higher bands. So Chelsea, I kind of wanted to move away from grammar and just ask you some basic questions about yourself, because I've only met you today. So I'd like to kind of just for my own benefit, get to know you a bit more. Like, so where's your hometown? Where are you from?
Well, as I'm sure everyone can hear, I'm not from Liverpool. I'm actually from just outside of Birmingham, so in the Midlands. And that Birmingham accent does sort of conceal some of my grammar. Actually, I know you wanted to move away from it, but unfortunately, as is with dialect, it kind of, you have your own sort of home way of speaking, right? And that does kind of cover over a lot of proper English, shall we say. It's not too bad. It's not as harsh as, say, a Scouse accent, but it can get in the way a little bit for some people.
Exactly. So Imran asks, how can I adapt the rules of grammar which are a bit difficult to memorize, and how can I understand the deep meaning of a simple sentence? So, I mean, yeah, it's like you just kind of have to know these parts of grammar. There's not really an easy trick to learning them. I would say you just have to read as many kind of academic works as you can, you know, research studies about something you're interested in, maybe, you know, your degree that you're going to go into, read some studies about it, because they're always going to have very academic kinds of grammar. And I feel like if you see this grammar regularly enough, it will kind of just go into your head and you'll get more of a sense of it. But in terms of, you know, like passive voice, comparatives and superlatives, you know, there are easier tricks to memorizing them, I guess, because most adjectives, you just add on ER for a comparative. And if you're doing a superlative form, you add on EST. And so there are little ways of memorizing these kind of things, but really you're just going to have to go through them. I mean, in this presentation here, I've picked the kind of most important parts of grammar that will elevate your mark for IELTS. So, you know, passive voice, modal verbs, these are things that if you learn, you can just easily impress your examiner. And so, you know, it's quite maybe trickier to learn them, but if you do, it's something you can come back to in your exam and just quickly pick up some marks.
If I could just interject, actually, it's all right. Grammar doesn't, so it will change the simple meaning of a sentence, like the tense of maybe when something happened or if something's going to happen, but it very rarely affects the deeper meaning of a sentence. So most of the time you can get across what you want to say without using the correct grammar, but using the correct grammar grammar helps give detail in sentences. It helps you get exact timings right. It helps you get the subject right, like who said it, you know, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't panic too much, but if you want to get good bands, the more reading you do, the wider vocabulary you'll learn, the better grammar rules you'll pick up. In fact, that would be my advice. Just read as much as you can.
Definitely. And then you'll just kind of pick it up naturally. I mean, I think it's always good to learn languages by doing something kind of fun for you and personal for you. So if you want to improve your speech, you know, watch some TV shows in English, or, you know, if you want to improve your written work, read lots of academic works as well. So Harris asks, I'm not good with using commas. How can I improve that? Yeah, I mean, commas are definitely something that even a lot of native speakers, I feel, don't use correctly. So it's something that punctuation is definitely important. And really, we use commas as a way of just kind of breaking up what we're saying. So if we have a kind of natural pause, typically where we put a comma in, and you just want to kind of sound out your sentences and think, where are the ideas being linked? Which idea is separated by something, by like a pause? And that's kind of when you'll typically want to use a comma. But again, that will come from just experience, reading. So if you've just joined the stream, I've said that, you know, we're going to be doing some classes where I go over a kind of academic piece of writing, and then I'm going to say, you know, what they've done well, because they tend to be written very academically, very precisely in terms of grammar. They'll have good comma use, good punctuation. Semicolons as well are particularly good to use in your essays.
Yeah. So we break up clauses in sentences, not only with commas, but colons, semicolons, any kind of punctuation mark there. Harris could have actually used a comma in his comment rather than a period. So where it says I'm not good with using commas, rather than a period there, you could have put comma, space, how can I improve that? And that would have been one sentence with two clauses rather than two separate sentences.
Exactly. And it's just commas are kind of a good way of linking your ideas and making it not very kind of rigid and, you know, like you're just saying all these different sentences very quickly, because that's something your examiners are going to think is kind of reflective of someone who doesn't have, you know, as strong a grasp of English. If you're saying simple sentences, try link your ideas together using punctuation, using commas, semicolons as well, dashes. You know, if you're doing a list, you can use colons as well. And these are just different level skills, higher level skills that your examiner will notice. And so Chelsea, can we return back to talking about Birmingham?
About me.
I've never been to Birmingham myself. A, would you recommend me going? And B, what would you recommend for me to do there?
Well, I would recommend you go. It's a very big, very vibrant city. It's a lot different to Liverpool. Whereas Liverpool, you can walk across one side to the other in about 20 minutes. Birmingham's not like that. There's sort of different, similar to Manchester, I guess. There's like different districts of the city. It's been a few years, however, since I've lived there, so I wouldn't really know what to recommend. I could point you in the direction of some good food, but other than that, I wouldn't be 100%. But yeah, it's massive, so there's plenty there to do for everyone.
Exactly, that's great. So Imran asks, for a long sentence, what should be my approach for understanding the meaning? Should I look at grammar or clauses, or is there any kind of chronology? So, I mean, yeah, it's just, I think you can split clauses up. And I mean, you know, clauses are split up by commas, like we said before. So I think look at individual clauses and look at what they're trying to say and
look
why.
At the words within the clauses, I think, to ascertain meaning rather than grammar or
exactly.
like actual structure.
You know, grammar is kind of an extra function of language. It's something that doesn't actually really communicate meaning. You know, with words, with vocabulary, that communicates meaning. So I could say to you guys, I could say sandwich, I could say chicken, and you would know that I want them. But if I was to grammatically structure it, I would say, you know, I want the chicken. So it doesn't kind of have any like specific use for getting across meaning, but it definitely helps your ideas flow together more nicely. And if you're writing, you know, you really need to be using grammar. I mean, in your speech, you know, you don't have to use grammar as tightly as you do in your writing. But definitely, I think it's important for your written work and making sure you achieve the higher bands. So Munmun says the semicolon is a hard one. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult. To be honest, I probably didn't know how to use a semicolon properly until I was, you know, in high school. So I think it's difficult with even native speakers as well. But really, it's just a good way of kind of introducing new ideas. And you typically use one. It's kind of used in place of the word therefore for me. That's kind of how I tend to use them.
I've actually got a good tip for using colons. And say I don't like to admit that I'm a grammar nerd, but I kind of am a little bit. I've read a book called Have You Eaten Grandma by Giles Brandreth. And he basically goes through the different sort of punctuation marks and how to correctly use them, the most common mistakes, that kind of thing. And a good tip for when you're using a colon, it's two clauses. If your second clause is sort of looking forward, as in binoculars, you use the colon. If it's two clauses that are kind of related, but not one's sort of chronologically following the other, or sort of adding more detail onto your last clause, you use the semicolon. So it's for lists where things aren't completely linked.
Great. So I think it's also important to note that semicolons are very formal. It's something you'd definitely be using in kind of academic works where you want to
Academic essays, definitely.
Yeah, when you want to express your ideas in, you know, a very formal kind of way. And similarly to that, you know, some types of punctuation are very informal. I mean, you know, exclamation marks, it's something I wouldn't really be expecting to see in an academic essay, because exclamation marks kind of mimic speech. So, you know, if you're saying something's amazing, you might use an exclamation mark on the end, but that's not really what you're trying to do in academic work. You know, you want to be expressing your ideas clearly, effectively, formally. So semicolon is difficult, but I think if you can learn the structure of it, I mean, how I do it, I kind of use it in place of the word therefore, and it kind of links your ideas together nicely. But definitely, if you can use a semicolon in your work, your examiners would definitely really like to see that. But it can be quite difficult to kind of know the structures for it. But if you just keep reading academic texts, you're going to be able to use them more often. So Chelsea, I was wondering maybe if you could ask me some questions about literally anything you want, you know, about my hometown, kind of anything, like, because that's typically what you do on the speaking exam. And if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to let me know. And we can also bring some of you guys into the call as well. So that'd be great.
So where are you from?
So I was born in Dundee in Scotland, and I lived there till I was about 8 years old. And then my dad got a different job down here, and so we moved down here. And so I've lived here now since I've been 8. And yeah, I love Liverpool. It's amazing. I stayed at uni here as well.
Okay.
And yeah.
And do you do anything as a job other than the online tutoring, or is this it for the moment?
I don't do anything else. I mean, I'm doing a master's as well. So I'll just interject to say Harris has said, I would love to join, but I'm about to enter the examination hall.
Good luck.
Is that for your IELTS exam, or just just trying to pick up more and more in a while? So good luck with your exam, if it's the IELTS exam, or if it's any kind of exam. Good luck anyway. But yeah, I think, you know, definitely good idea to brush up on grammar before your exam, because it's, you know, it's a difficult thing in another language. It's a difficult thing knowing grammar. You know, I feel like vocabulary, you can learn the word for something in your native language. You know, you can learn that quite quickly. With grammar and learning how to structure all these different words together, that's something I would definitely be learning before my
I will
exam.
say the more and more you do it, the easier it gets.
Exactly. So Harris says it's an International Biology Olympics. That sounds pretty interesting to me.
Wild.
Yeah, good luck with it, my friend. It sounds like something I would be absolutely terrible at, so I'm glad I'm here. But yeah, guys, that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. Give you guys the experience of talking, you know, seeing me and Chelsea talk, how native speakers talk with each other. We've covered grammar. We've gone over some structures. Definitely make sure you're using these in your essays. Keep doing practice questions. Keep practicing the essays, using some of these grammatical constructions. Preparing, guys, most important thing, especially for grammar. You just have to know this. You just have to kind of learn it and prepare for it. But guys, if any of you want to join in the call, feel free. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to let me know. But for now, I'm probably going to be ending the broadcast unless anyone has any more questions. Chelsea, I'm just wondering if you've got anything else you'd like to mention at all, or
I don't really think so. Like I say, that I think watching things in English and kind of having the subtitles up reading, they're the two biggest. Actually seeing grammar written out is the biggest help you're going to get here. So I think reading is key.
And just seeing all the different structures. I mean, I've given a couple examples of stuff here, but really there's so many different ways you can structure things grammatically. So I think just absorbing that information, those kind of academic texts, I think is really important. So
we had a question come in.
Yeah, Imran's just said, if anyone wants to be an expert in the language, are they required to know the grammar, or should we know the kind of intuitiveness of language? I think that's what you're trying to say.
I would say both. If you want to be considered an expert in a language field, you need to know the intuitive fact of what someone is trying to get across, and you need to be aware of the grammatical structures they're trying to use and need to use to sort of convey that information correctly.
These are just all parts of language, vocabulary, grammar. If you want to be an expert, you have to know all of them. You can get by with not knowing grammar. I mean, you can speak to people really well without knowing grammar, really, I would say. But definitely for your written work, for your IELTS exam, grammar's really going to elevate your mark, because a lot of people struggle with grammar. So if you can use it really effectively and learn it really well,
you'll stand out.
Yeah, you're going to stand out, set yourself aside from other candidates who haven't revised grammar as much as you have. So Imran says, could I join? Yes, you can.
Of course.
I'll just put the link in the chat again. Because, I know you joined yesterday and we had a chat, so we can do that again. So I'll just put the link in the chat there. If anyone else wants to join as well, that would be great, and we can have a kind of group conversation and ask you guys some different questions. Probably going to be asking Imran a little bit about grammar, his experience of grammar. I know yesterday Imran said, grammar's maybe an element he struggles with a bit more than other types, and his spoken English was actually really good. So Hadi says, how can I join?
If you just click the link that's been posted in the Facebook, it should take you to the StreamYard sort of waiting room, I guess.
Yeah, and then you can be added in, at a kind of lulling conversation, and I'll add you in. So Harris asks just a quick question, when will be the next live? So we're going to be doing these lives pretty much every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 2 p.m. GMT +1 time. So I'll just put this in the chat for you guys. Obviously, we've got international audience, so you can have to type your time zone in and find out where 2 p.m. is relative to where you are. I think in Bangladesh time, which I know a lot of people are from here, it's 7 p.m. So Monday to Thursday, so 2 p.m. UK time. And I'll just put that in the chat for you guys to see.
It's not working. When you click on the link, it should take you to the StreamYard broadcast, and then you have to allow your microphone, I believe, at least, and then you can sort of drag yourself onto the broadcast. You have to actually click yourself to add to the stream.
Yeah. Yeah, guys, you don't have to have your camera on as well if you don't want. If you want to lie back in bed and talk to us, that's fine as well, because I know sometimes people don't want to do that. So you can just have your mic on if you want. It's totally up to you. Hopefully you guys can join. I've put the link in the chat here, and you should be able to just click it, and you'll get in a kind of waiting area, and then I can add you in. And yeah, sometimes I feel like, if you're learning English in Bangladesh, you're not going to be around native speakers. So I think it is particularly helpful to kind of know how
these conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially in your listening exam, you're going to be listening to people with native accents, native English speaking countries. So guys, I'm hoping you can join. If you can't join, don't worry. there are sometimes connection problems because we're interacting with people all around the world. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. We're here every day at 2 p.m. Except Fridays and obviously Saturdays and Sundays. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll be doing these things. So Imran's managed to join back in the call. So I'm just going to add him to the call and ask him some questions. So hello again. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
So Imran's I'm great. Cheers. I'm great. Cheers. Cheers for joining. So I know we had a little chat yesterday as well.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Yeah, no worries. Do you feel like we
yeah,
do you feel like you
Even
found
today I feel
out
a bit
new
nervous. I'm
grammar?
sorry for that.
Oh, don't worry. Do you feel like you kind of, found out some new parts of grammar you didn't know before and, found out ways of using them in your essays? Because I know you said grammar was maybe one area you kind of struggled with a bit more than others. So, did you know like about modal verbs and how to use them before?
Yeah, I know this kind of thing, but the problem is like, when I read the article and tried to write it down back to my teachers, because we have to do it in a proper way, that time is actually I face a lot of problem, because when I gave it to them and they said that you have a lot of mistake in the grammatical, especially not like in a compound sentence or complex sentence, but the problem started when I write down the simple sentences. What I want to, try to find, what I want to, uh, I mean, what I want to say on that sentence, probably it's not on that sentences, but when I do a presentation in front of the teachers, then they can understand, oh, you actually told this on that sentences. And for that reason, a lot of time I face a lot of trouble. So yeah, that's the kind of problem I face, especially linking word and the phrase and the idioms. It's a kind of a very difficult thing, because I like an undergrad student, they don't want to like a very normal way of writing. They want to be a very like
academic.
So that which is
being concise, I think, is key for any kind of academic writing. They don't want you to be too fluffy, shall we say, with the
good language is about communicating ideas effectively. Good language is not rambling about everything. It's about saying exactly
saying what you mean in as concise a way as possible.
Exactly.
Like in here, it's not that's the way we actually I mean, they don't judge in that way. They just try to, even probably teachers understand that what the student tried to mean on that sentences, but they want more from you. Like it should be a more accurate, like so that they can understand by the reading. Or if we don't make on that way, then it's a bit tough and it's a bit hard to actually like because I did a two proposal in my university when I was undergrad, especially in my fourth and fifth semester, and because I was rejected 3 or 4 times, so it's a bit very hard for me to actually like in a proper way of writing, and there was a kind of method rules they follow, and we have to follow that rule. It's not something like we write down it and give it to them. They don't accept that because we have to write in a very short but so much, but the meaning should be there is 100%. So like that, so it's a bit difficult. So then I ask a questions before that for the long sentences, especially because of when I read those things, then like when they use the linking words, then kind of my head was going very hard to understand like what was the basic meaning of the whole sentence. Like it was very hard, so I have to like give more than a like 5 minute, 10 minute, 20 minutes just for the one sentences, and it's a bit hard because the paper was a bit hard, even a bit big.
I think what's interesting is like your spoken English is really good and you're using loads of good linking words and stuff like that. So I think you don't learn language in a kind of linear way. You're not going to be as good at grammar as you are at speech. often. You're going to learn one more than the other. So I think for the purpose of IELTS, you're doing exactly the right thing. You want to focus on your weaker areas because they're all marked to the same level. If you understand, it's all 25%, 25% vocabulary, 25% grammar. And so, I think you're doing the right thing. In terms of linking phrases and improving your written work, I feel like you can really just learn the structure of the questions and learn some set phrases that you can use for multiple questions, because then you can get asked about anything and you'll just instantly already know how to introduce your ideas. Like use words like furthermore, moreover, consequently, to substantiate my point, I would say, and just kind of learn these set phrases, and then you can just rehash them for any question you get set in the exam. And I think with that, it's just, I wouldn't say there's like major kind of learning curve to it. I think you just kind of just have to learn these structures. You just have to memorize them, really. That's what I would say. It's just the most effective way of doing it. Definitely use
Well, the fact
linking.
is, like, because I was a kind of international student, so I do some course, especially which is provided by the like Harvard University or something like that, because it's especially the like very early course of my undergraduate level, like the calculus and those other stuff for like free, or I mean 2 or 3 friends actually buy this course and try to do that. So when when I do the exam or write down that's how I feel about this, so they told me that this is not just important to understand the grammar or like understand and this is said by it's said by the foreigner teacher. So she said to me that you have to understand the intuitive meaning, so you have to go deep and try to understand, like, and then I a bit after that I'm a bit confused, like what is that intuitive means. I mean, if I don't understand properly, then how I can go like very deep on that sentence languages. And then she told me that you have to study a couple of story, and she's told me that like John Milton poem books, like but it was very difficult to understand, like the John Milton poem. I was 2 or 3 I did, and then I was like, okay, I should I should live my life in a peaceful way. I don't want to go with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, grammar, it's
Very,
something
very difficult to understand the structure. I mean, I understand the structure of the sentence, but the meaning is like, when they explained to me, it was like, oh, I was completely wrong.
yeah. Yeah, like I think that's just what I was saying before. I mean, you don't have to know every kind of grammatical structure in the universe to pass your IELTS exam or to get high bands even. You really don't. Obviously, it would probably help if you did, but you don't have to. I think you can really get away with learning these set phrases, learning how they help your essay flow, knowing when to say, on the other hand, furthermore, and being able to construct certain sentences and learning how to do them and then repeating them on different questions, that would be an easy way to elevate your band, because nobody's expecting you to be able to write like incredible academic piece of work for your IELTS exam. As long as you know these kind of set phrases, you can use them in different situations. But I think you're doing the
big
right
one,
thing.
I think, is reading your work back to you.
Definitely.
I think you touched on that earlier. Read your sentences out loud. If there's too many sort of short single clause sentences, it's going to read really quickly and really like informally. It's not going to sound very good at all. Mm-hmm. So then you start looking and thinking, oh, are there too shorter sentences that I can link together using a comma and sort of make it flow a little bit better? Yeah, reading aloud is a huge helper for grammar.
Like Imran,
you find where you put the natural pauses in and stuff.
Sorry, Imran, because your speech is so good, that definitely makes sense to do that. You read out your written work, and then you can kind of, you know, use your speech to improve your written work as well. I think definitely sounding it out and thinking, okay, does this really sound like something a native speaker would say? Then I think that's an effective way of improving it. Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean,
Yeah, no worries.
as a language student, you did probably kind of language. I mean, I didn't remember the last time you said that
Yeah.
you did graduation in the language or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I did an undergraduate degree in English
So
language.
like, so my question is like, if I understand, like, if somebody said, like, especially because we have a couple of foreign faculty, so especially like when they speak, it's a bit, very speedy, and then like it's a very difficult to understand. Like whole, like 60% I can understand, and then what should be my mindset when I listen to them, so that I can understand at least 80% or 90%. Because if I miss 20%, that is completely like, it was a very bad impact on my like one lecture, because we have very few lecture in a one courses. So like, what should be my mindset so that I understand at least like 60 or 70%. So,
Yeah, I
should,
mean, obviously it's about picking out key words. I mean, that's particularly going to be particularly useful for your IELTS listening exam. You're going to have to pick out little words. And sometimes in the IELTS listening exam, what they do is they try to trick you. So they'll say, for example, you know, the question might be, what time it's his doctor's appointment, okay? And then they'll try to trick you and they'll be like, oh, it's at 6 p.m. Actually, no, it's not. It's at 8 p.m. And so you've kind of just got to listen really carefully and listen to when they might be tricking you like that. But for your lectures, definitely, I mean, it just comes with practice, surrounding yourself with English. You know, if you like a particular series, watch it in English, watch it dubbed. Just surround yourself with English, constantly be listening to English. I mean, yeah, you have to really hear out certain words that impact meaning, because like I said before, grammar doesn't do much for meaning, you know? Grammatical structures, you don't need to know them to understand what someone's saying to you. So for the listening exercise of the listening portion of the IELTS exam, I would say grammar's not particularly important. It's more important for written work. But, you know, I think just listening out for individual words, like ignoring the grammar, trying to, you know, find out nouns and things that actually impact the sentence is really important. But I just think, yeah, surrounding yourself with English, that's the most important thing, because that'll get you used to hearing what people are saying. And also, I would definitely learn things in a range of accents, because no one person speaks English the same as the next person. It just doesn't happen. Everyone's got different accents, and so it's important to
so like
listen
I
to a
had a
range.
very hard time to like solve the multiple choice and map questions, because
Yeah,
of a because it's a bit very quick they speak. So I mean, it's sometimes I just lose focus on the first question, so that they already go to the second questions.
yeah, of
then
course.
then like, because I'm now talking to you and I understand what you are saying, all the same. But when it comes to the exam, so they sometimes use a kind of word which is really, I don't even heard those kind of word. And that's a bit difficult, because like, if I don't know the word, then it's really difficult to understand that what they want to say. So in that case, what should be my mindset? Like, if at least I can understand that as a 50%, so that I can
Yeah.
understand, okay, uh, let's do something. It's so that it probably
Mhm.
50% would
I
have a
mean,
chance to be
yeah,
right.
I think that's about just improving your vocabulary. And I mean, the IELTS exam, there's a very clear kind of format to it. They're not going to ask you something totally crazy. There's a kind of set list of topics they typically ask you about. So, yeah, it could be about someone going to a doctor's appointment, someone arranging something over the phone, you know, returning an item. These kinds of very common things that we all kind of have to do in our day-to-day life. In the listening exam, that's really what they'll ask you about. And, in the writing exam, they'll ask you about like social issues, something related to health, education. And I think it's about just learning vocabulary around these topics. And then, they're going to come up in the exam. You're going to hear them because you've revised them before. And so, yeah, I think that's probably my advice for that. Just generally try and improve your vocabulary. Surround yourself with English as much as you can. Join the live chats, talk to me, and let me know if there's any words you don't understand as well, because, that's what we're here for. If you don't understand something, let me know and I'll repeat it again or something. And you'll just build up your vocabulary and your sense of grammar as well. But yeah, Imran, if you've got any other questions, feel free. Chelsea as well, if you'd like to say anything else. I probably would end the broadcast shortly, guys, but we will be here at 2 p.m. tomorrow as well. And we'll be covering vocabulary as well, and how you can kind of improve your vocabulary and learn about different topics as well for your exam. But Chelsea, do you have anything to add to that? Or
I think I'm good. Wow. Other than read, no.
Thank you, Imran, by the way. Cheers for joining the call. Really good again. Sorry, Chelsea.
I said other than read, no. I think it's literally the best advice anyone can give.
Pretty much.
For learning English, especially writing.
Yeah, of course. Just surround yourself with English, guys. If you enjoy doing something, do it in English.
Try and bring it into things you enjoy.
Yeah, definitely, because you can sit down with some grammar textbook and you might get a bit in your own head about it. You might get a bit bored. Surround yourself with language constantly, with English, and you can improve your English naturally. Pick it up as you go. And so, guys, I'll see you all at 2 p.m. tomorrow, hopefully, and we'll talk a little bit about vocabulary. Types of vocabulary that would really be useful for your IELTS exam. And so cheers for joining the stream, guys, and hope